Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news shows so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning to everybody. Thank you for being here. Our website, as always, is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. This week, I would say it's an unusual episode of Monday Morning because there's like a really positive force in the world right now that can't be ignored and that everyone, including the corporate media, has to pay attention to.
Jake Tapper?
Not Jake. Well, it's close. He's getting there, maybe. Just kidding. No, Zohran Mamdani and the grassroots movement that propelled him in New York City is causing a complete establishment freakout. And it's wonderful to see. So we'll be getting into that today extensively on the show.
Yeah, you definitely do love to see it, as the kids like to say. Well, how are we on likes? I heard that we're actually pretty good on likes, which shows that maybe you're more trained than I thought. Let's see. 129. All right. We're rating 45 likes. Although we do appreciate that. So by the end of this next clip, let's make sure that you guys have smashed that like. All right. Should we get to Meet the Depressed? Start off with those folks.
Good Sunday morning from our NBC headquarters here in New York. President Trump's signature piece of legislation hangs in the balance this weekend. Overnight, Senate Republicans moving one step closer to passing his massive tax and spending bill by his July 4th deadline.
We have before us today a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver legislation to create a safer, stronger, and more prosperous America. It's time to get this legislation across the finish line.
Now, without the votes to block it, Democrats are working to delay the process, demanding the full 940-page bill be read from the Senate floor.
Medicaid will be fed to the sharks under this bill. Healthcare costs will go up for everyone, even if you don't have Medicaid.
All true, Chuck Schumer, but listen, we need someone else to deliver this message, okay? If we're going to be fighting, as we should be, this Republican bill, which cuts Medicaid, which cuts SNAP benefits, Democrats, I'm begging you, you got to find someone else to be this. Don't make Chuck Schumer the face of the resistance.
Anything really, yeah.
Because he's just so annoying that people are going to reflexively support the opposite of what he's advocating.
Exactly. They're going to become supporters of the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
But Republicans have already lost 2 votes, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky and Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, and they can only afford to lose 1 more. Senator Tillis saying he's voting no because of the cuts to Medicaid for his state. Overnight, the president threatening to primary him over.
It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Rand Paul is someone who's fine with the Medicaid cuts.
Of course.
So because he's a libertarian. Tillis, though, recognizing that if he wants to be reelected, throwing a bunch of people off Medicaid in his state is not going to be very palatable. So what is he doing? He's actually just resigning because he's realizing he has no hope. So that's his solution, because Trump is dead set on cutting Medicaid and throwing out of office anybody who challenges him. Yeah,
I mean, it is really interesting that I think this guy Tillis is probably reading the tea leaves and seeing how angry people are, and seeing that if you cut people's benefits, even people who are Republicans are going to yell at you, as we've been seeing from town halls. So, but don't worry, Aaron, because there are a lot more principled Republicans who are definitely going to vote against it, right? Because they realize how bad the bill is. Let's take a listen.
For his opposition, Missouri Senator Josh.
Oh wait, sorry. Also. Trump is offering a very good threat. Hold on. Let's see what he's doing about
threatening to primary him over his opposition. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley told NBC he plans to vote yes, while insisting the party should have done better.
I mean, we can't be cutting health care for working people and for poor people in order to constantly give special tax treatment to corporations and other entities.
Well, apparently we can be cutting them because that's precisely what you're voting for. I mean, it's actually worse, in my opinion, to acknowledge how terrible this is and then despite that, vote for it. I mean, at least pretend that it's okay, that pretend that you're voting for something that's good. But why are you like pointing out how bad this bill is and then voting for it.
He's like, we can't be cutting Medicaid and throwing people off of their health care just to enrich wealthy people. Anyway, got to go vote for cutting Medicaid and throwing people off their Medicare and enriching wealthy people further. That's his position. I mean, he was the face of the Republican opposition to Medicaid cuts because, like, he's got this self-styled reputation as a populist.
Exactly.
Looks out for working people. Sometimes says some, like, you know, things that are like against monopolies, and he goes ahead and votes for Trump's stupid bill. That's the Republican Party in a nutshell. It's a cult. It's a complete cult.
It is, yeah. All right.
And Elon Musk calling the latest version of the bill, quote, utterly insane and destructive for the economy. Now, the bill includes an extension of the 2017 tax cuts, more money for both defense spending and the border, plus changes and cuts to.
Oh, good. Well, thank God they found some more money for, quote unquote, defense spending, which means the military industrial complex. Got to take away the meager health care that people already get in order to further enrich military contractors to push the budget up towards $1 trillion. That's a must pass, of course.
I have to say, I do enjoy seeing the people of various backgrounds opposing this bill. Well, that's not really correct. They're not opposing it. Some of them are speaking critically about it without doing anything. But it's interesting to see it from different angles. If only these people could get their stuff together enough to. And who knows? Maybe something will happen with this vote. We'll have to see. But it's nice seeing, like, populists and libertarians who have very opposing views both hate the bill for different reasons.
You know, I got to say, by the way, I am back fully in the camp of Noam Chomsky when it comes to voting. Like, you don't think voting's are like, we have a managed democracy. We don't have much of a choice, but in the 5 seconds we spend to think about what our choice is every 4 years, or, you know, I think you should vote for the people who do the least amount of harm. And I understand in 2024, people who couldn't vote for Democrats given the Gaza genocide. But given that Trump has continued the genocide now, has deepened his commitment to Israel actually by bombing Iran on its behalf, that underscores that there really is no difference between these two parties. So even punishing someone for their actions, although I can understand it in the context of 2024, now that no longer applies. And look, domestically, there just is a huge difference between these two parties. Republicans serve the ultra-rich at a faster velocity than Democrats do. I mean, not that Democrats don't serve the ultra-rich, but what the Republicans are doing now, cutting Medicaid, increasing the Pentagon budget even higher, that just shows, like, on these issues, there is actually a difference. And I think you want to elect the opponents that you want. Like, don't think of electing people in terms of, like, who's going to do your bidding, but who's the better opponent for you. And
yes,
Democrats, domestically at least, I think, do less damage. I'm sorry to sound like a lib, but I think that's unmistakably true now.
Well, there's a Ben Jealous quote, which is, you know, you don't elect the person who you think is going to make change. You elect the person who you think will make it easier for you to make change.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Oh my God, so many people unsubscribe right now. All right.
Sorry.
Despite the criticism from within his own ranks, President Trump urging Republicans to fall in line.
And look, we have a lot of very committed people, and they feel very strongly about subjects that you're not even thinking about that are important to Republicans. The problem we have is that it's a great bill. It's a popular bill, but we'll get no Democrats only because they don't want to vote for Trump.
Joining me now is Republican Senator Mark.
Is it a popular bill? I mean, according to all the polls I've seen, most don't support cutting Medicaid. Do most people support handing more of their tax dollars to Raytheon and Lockheed Martin? I also don't think that's very popular. So
yeah, it's not actually. So according to reputable polls like Quinnipiac University and KFF, 53% to 64% of people disapprove. And it does fall along party lines, not surprisingly. But the majority of Democrats and independents disapprove. And the Republicans who do approve, it's by, not that much.
All right. Well, listen, let's turn to some rare positive news, especially on these Sunday shows. Zohran Mamdani, winner of the Democratic primary in the New York mayor's race. And when you win that race, the Democratic primary in New York City, that means you're probably going to be the mayor. And that prospect of him being the mayor is freaking out a lot of really powerful people on both sides of the aisle, because Zohran Mamdani represents something new. He represents not just progressive politics domestically, but also, clear opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza, which the establishment of both parties have supported. And accordingly, a lot of elites are really, really upset about him. And you're going to see why, because just listen to the way he stands up for his positions. It's pretty rare for a Democratic politician, especially a progressive one. So let's hear from Zohran Mamdani, who spoke to Meet the Press.
Self-described Democratic socialist. You are a self-described Democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has had to say. He's had a lot to say about your campaign. He called you a communist. Because he's the president, I want to give you a chance to respond directly to him. How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not. And I have already had to start to get used to the fact that the president will talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am, ultimately because he wants.
Remember, he did say how terrible he looked. We covered this a little bit. And Aaron, on Thursday Throwdown, and Aaron pointed out, I believe it was you, Aaron, right, who pointed out the irony of Donald Trump talking about someone's looks.
Yeah, and especially someone like Zohran Mamdani, who just, I mean, as you pointed out, I mean, since we're trading, since we're citing each other, you pointed out that like you can't find a bad picture of Zohran Mamdani. It's just really impossible. Like, he's just so photogenic.
Yeah, same thing with AOC. Again, whatever. This is unrelated to their politics, but people have a very hard time when they try to attack them based on their looks.
Wants to distract from what I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for the very working people that he ran a campaign to empower that he has since then betrayed. And when we talk about my politics, I call myself a democratic socialist in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive.
I mean, that King quote, I'm sorry, that's a pretty good quote. I mean, he's really set himself up powerfully there.
As a political talent, like putting aside the substance for a second, people have been comparing him to Obama, but he's so much more talented than Obama. First of all, he speaks at a much better clip because Obama speaks so slowly because every single word from Obama is calibrated to like sound lofty while saying absolutely nothing. Right. So Obama speaks in just slow, boring way. So, but Mamdani actually believes in something. So he's got more of a flow. And then of course you add in the substance, and he's not, for example, citing Dr. King just to like, push this like this blank slate that Obama was, where you can like basically turn him into anything, either like a, like as Obama even talked about, like, I kind of stood for nothing and people just made of me what they wanted to. Mamdani actually cites Dr. King, the social justice aspect of Dr. King, not just the sort of, not just the racial equality that Obama tried to represent, but while avoiding and actually deepening the class divide, because he still served Wall Street, which Zohran Mamdani doesn't do. So politically, he's just a lot more talented, and he says something, which is a great gift.
Well, you mentioned flow, and of course, Zohran was a rapper. Perhaps he never stopped being a rapper, but he did rap. So I'm excited to see that flow. But maybe it's built in there. Yeah.
Me too. Okay. Well, let's hear more from Zohran Mamdani, because one of the, the issue where he's most quote unquote controversial, I really stress that quote unquote controversial, is that he sees Palestinians as equal human beings, which if you're in politics, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you cannot do. The whole premise of both parties when it comes to the Middle East is that like Israelis are superior and Palestinians are not.
Right.
In fact, they're not even human beings. And Zohran Mamdani has made the political mistake in their eyes of actually seeing everyone is equal. So he's going to be challenged on that now.
And by the way, I just want to give people a little bit of a setup about where this comes from. This whole question about globalize the intifada comes from a Bulwark podcast appearance that he was on. And Tim, what is his last name? I can't remember his last name. Tim Miller, thank you. Tim Miller asks
He's
him
like a
about,
neocon guy. He's a neocon guy who wears like a shell necklace. That's his.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's
He's
his
a never Trumper.
Yeah.
And
a never Trumper, but who wears a shell necklace.
Yeah,
like,
he's a
like
yeah.
So neocon, but not in like a stuffy suit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when I heard everyone asking him about this, by the way, everyone bringing up the globalized intifada, I was like, oh, he must have said that at a protest, or oh, he must have very close allies who've said that. By the way, not true. Tim Miller just out of the blue asked him about the term globalized intifada. Okay.
Yeah, but look, even if you did have allies who said globalized intifada, what's actually wrong with that?
No.
You know,
I just mean like
I'm just saying it's like,
yeah.
but even the fact that this is a controversy in itself, whether Zohran said it or not, or as it's like, it's not only manufactured because he never said it himself, but also like we glorify the American Revolution here, right? What was the American? It was resistance against tyranny. That's what an intifada is too. It's shaking off a murderous occupation.
Right.
So why wouldn't we want to globalize that?
My point though is that it's just so cynical, and it wasn't at all organic. He just had to bring it up. And it would be great if Tim Miller ever brought up problematic, in his opinion, quotes, slogans by Zionists. Like, does he ask people who are Zionist politicians if they're going to condemn a certain phrase? Or how about, does he ever ask them, because he cares about from the river to the sea, because he asked Zohran about globalized intifada and also from the river to the sea. Does he ask them about the fact that Likud wants all the territory from the river to the sea? That never seems to come up. All right, let's take a look at this clip.
I want to ask you about an issue that has divided some New Yorkers in recent weeks. You were recently asked about the term globalize the intifada, if it makes you uncomfortable. In that moment, you did not condemn the phrase. Now, just so folks understand, it's a phrase that many people hear as a call to violence against Jews. There's been a lot of attention.
It's interesting. She just expressed how some people hear it, right? She shows the way that some people hear it in a negative way and think that it means violence against Jews. It's interesting she doesn't clarify. And yet for other people, it is a term that means shaking off, because that's literally what the Arabic means. And the first intifada, as we pointed out in the past, was nonviolent. I mean, people threw rocks. That's how violent the first intifada was. So there's nothing inherently violent about that term. And again, it's just so rich that people are so offended by terms that they claim call for violence, and they're okay with the actual violence being perpetrated by Israel.
Intifada literally means shaking off, and shaking off what? Military occupation. If we care about freedom, that's what we're supposed to be about. So the controversy in itself, it's fake on so many levels.
Of course, yeah. And again, it's just a good reminder, when you're watching the media, right? You're not aware of the choices that they're making because they're just presenting them in real time. But again, why aren't other people ever asked about this stuff on the other side? Why aren't people asked to condemn the actual violence taking part? I mean, we need to come up for a new term with people who are more upset about calls. People keep bringing up death to, I don't want to say it because I don't want us to get taken down from YouTube, but a certain thing to America, a certain thing to the IDF. And it's so rich watching these people up in arms about this term, this call, and they're absolutely silent about the actual deaths being perpetrated, the actual murders being perpetrated against people. Anyway, by the way, we're not even a half the amount of likes. Please don't make me pause our stream. I don't like it. It hurts me more than it hurts you. We have 1,700 people watching, and we are at 638. This is pathetic. I want to see us up to 1,000 by the end of the next clip. You heard me, guys. 1K. All right. 1K. Let's see. Can we get any increase right now? This is really preposterous. Oh my God. We're at 695. All right. I'm giving you one clip to get to 1,000. All right. Let's go back.
On this issue. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond here and now. Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights. And ultimately, that's what is the foundation of so much of my politics, the belief that freedom and justice and safety are things that, to have meaning, have to be applied to all people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
But do you actually condemn it? I think that's the question and the outstanding issue that a number of people, both of the Jewish faith and beyond, have. Do you condemn that phase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Colder.
It's just sort of like, do you condemn a term you've never uttered before? Like, why don't you just ask him all day? Like, okay, how about this term? Do you condemn this one? Like,
right, exactly.
He's never said it. Like, why is this one? And they should not anything else. Like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. How about this term?
Right.
That was used back in the 18th century.
Exactly, right.
You know, like it's just so nonsensical. The way they come up with these fake controversies, it's like an art. There could be a whole class taught, like how to smear someone based on something they've never said. And again, and that is actually not even offensive, because what's wrong with globalizing a struggle for freedom? Like, that's what we're all supposed to care about, is freedom.
Right. You know, I mean, again, it reminds me so much of when Welker has asked Israel defenders what they have to say about protesters saying kill them all, flatten them. Oh no, she doesn't ask them about that. Because when the other side calls for violence,
or Colorado.
Never.
Okay, we can go back to this.
About this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city. And I've heard those fears and I've had those conversations, and ultimately they are part and parcel of why in my campaign I've put forward a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner especially of that of Donald Trump, who has put one New Yorker in jail who's just returned to his family, Mahmoud Khalil, for that very supposed crime of speech. Ultimately, what I think I need to show is the ability to not only talk about something, but to tackle it and to make clear that there's no room for anti-Semitism in this city. And we have to root out that bigotry. And ultimately, we do that through the actions. And that is the mayor I will be, one that protects Jewish New Yorkers and lives up to that commitment through the work that I do.
But quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
Because there's a million, first of all, again, there's nothing to condemn about globalizing a freedom struggle. Second of all, even if there were, his job is not to be the speech policer, as he's saying, you know, and that's what Donald Trump is trying to do by imprisoning people for their free speech. But again, like, the premise is so skewed because, you know, Kate, as you're pointing out, like, no one's ever asked to condemn all the Islamophobic pro-Israel rhetoric, like, that justifies mass murder of people. So the whole premise of trying to hold someone to account for this one little phrase, especially when it's not even inherently violent, is just, it's so stupid. As for his answer about increasing anti-hate crime, you know, like, what's that really going to do? You know, like, personally, I think public funding can be better used. I don't know. I haven't seen the studies, but and if anything, we need to, if there's any money to be spent, it's to de-radicalize Israel supporters. And to get them to stop being so paranoid about mythical anti-Semitism and stop using that fear-mongering to cover up for genocide. I mean, if there's some money to be put into that, I'd support that. But aside from that, like, what are you going to, like, what kind of funding will address what's called anti-Semitism, quote unquote? Because the people accused of being anti-Semitic are just people who, for the most part, oppose mass murder.
Right. One theory, what he's saying, he's going to increase hate crime funding would be, you know, the people who do, obviously for Zohran, it wouldn't be someone who says something anti-Zionist. This is hate crime legislation and this is very controversial, including among, you know, leftists and decarceral people, because, you know, people who don't believe that the carceral state is the answer to things, even if they are against, you know, it's almost like a free speech issue. Not that anyone wants this to happen, but a lot of people who are against, obviously, the actual hate crimes being committed don't think that the place that you should be addressing that is in the carceral state, because interestingly enough, you know, as everything else in the carceral state, it winds up disproportionately punishing disadvantaged people, you know, marginalized people. But you know, it is really stunning because it's not just that people say things that imply violence against Palestinians, right, at protests for Israel. I mean, we've had people wishing rape on people. We've seen people actually say kill them all. And it's so interesting that we haven't had a single example that's real at pro-Palestine rallies that go anywhere near that call for violence that we see openly done by the other side. And it's not part of the discourse at all. I mean, God forbid, can you imagine Welker spending an entire segment of an interview asking again and again and again if someone will condemn the call to kill them all, to flatten Gaza? Anyway, unbelievable. I feel like she has someone in her ear who's like, don't let him leave. Don't let him leave until he condemns it.
Look, Zohran's asked to condemn the term globalized the Intifada. I'm going to introduce a new term, and I'm going to do it using my Jewish privilege, okay? It's called no Jew for you, okay? If you're someone who's trying to get someone to condemn this certain phrase, if it's at all, if you're doing anything to serve Israeli genocide, you're doing anything to distract from the moral issue of our time, which is a Holocaust, whatever you want to call it, mass murder of a defenseless civilian population in Gaza, no Jew for you. Stop talking about anti-Semitism. You don't have the right to talk about it. Like, don't talk about Jewish safety, nothing. Like, we're sick of it.
Get us out of your mouths.
There's mass murder going on. Okay. There's mass murder. That's the issue of our time. Everything else is a distraction and used to cover up for it. So if you're using anything to do with Judaism, Jewish safety to cover up for that, no Jew for you.
Yeah, no Jew for you. I like that. And also, obviously, Aaron, you and I are motivated by a support of Palestinian human rights. We both have that weird fringe view, according to mainstream media, that Palestinians are equal. But it also happens to be that the irony in people calling Jews like us self-loathing Jews or anti-Semites is that what is creating more anti-Semitism? When Jews speak out against Israel, or when Jews pretend that Israel represents all of us, when Israel pretends that they represent all of us? What's a better way to increase anti-Semitism than by live streaming a genocide and saying that's done for Jews?
All right. Well, you wanted to play the clip of Zohran on the Bulwark, the one that caused the should we
could do that. Or I don't know. We're kind of behind. It's up to you. It's not
okay.
I want to point out something though. Yeah. Do you want us to play the clip? But either way, I want to make a point.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, because sorry, that made it sound like I was like, let me speak, which you were not silencing me at all. I'm just clarifying. So what's interesting is that during this clip, when he's asked about the term globalized intifada, he points out rightly that the Holocaust Museum, the actual Holocaust Museum, used the word intifada in their Arabic translation of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. So they translated the Warsaw Ghetto shaking off, right, as that term. And then the Holocaust Museum got mad at Zohran for pointing that out. But sorry, Holocaust Museum, sorry, not sorry, but you guys on your own website had intifada as the term for the war for uprising up until I believe May 2024. So boom. All right.
Okay, well, let's go to Donald Trump. We heard him call Zohran Mamdani a communist, but let's give Donald Trump, his due and let him expound on his beliefs about Zohran Mamdani and what he has to say.
What did you make of the New York Democrat primary? Mamdani.
He's a communist. I think it's very bad for New York. I don't know that he's going to get in. It's inconceivable that but he's a communist, and he's a pure communist. I think he admits it, but I can't imagine it. But let's say this.
And by the way,
he doesn't admit it. He doesn't admit it. He's not a communist. He says, "I'm not a communist." Not that there's anything wrong with being a communist. Right. I mean, I think it's better than being a plutocratic supporter of mass murder. Right. But anyway, he doesn't even call himself a communist.
Right. He's very explicit. It's not like he's hiding it. He runs openly as a democratic socialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money. He's got to do the right thing. It's shocking that I would have assumed that I used to say we will never have a socialist in this country. No, but we'll have a communist. I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York. So I was very surprised when I said, I never heard of him. I don't know who he is.
Well,
okay, so he's saying that unless Zohran Mamdani, if he gets elected mayor, does what Trump wants, then New York City will not get any money. So the higher state will not be giving any money to a major city, the most important city in the country. That sounds like the caricature of what a communist would do. Like, unless you bow down to our edict, no resources for you. We're taking all of it from you, and we're denying millions of people of their freedom and their rights as tax-paying citizens. I don't know. That sounds pretty communist to me in the caricature of communism.
Right.
I don't mean to.
No, it's really funny because I can't remember who it was, but someone tweeted out like, I think it's time to make it illegal to run as a communist. I'm like, wow, you really sound like a free market, laissez-faire capitalist who lets the market determine things. And you really sound like someone who's rejecting state intervention, right? Which is one of the biggest critiques of communism. Like, these people just don't hear themselves speak. Guys, find someone you should read your tweets back out loud and show them to a normal person, but you don't have any normal friends. Okay.
All right. Well, how are Democrats handling the election of a articulate, charismatic, progressive who also is against the Gaza genocide, which all of them support, including Hakei Jeff? Well, Hakei Jeff was asked about Zohran Mamdani by ABC News.
Start with the big news, Leader Jeffries, out of your hometown. Mamdani won a big victory. Have you endorsed him yet?
I have not. We had a conversation on Wednesday morning where I congratulated him on the campaign that he ran, a campaign that clearly was relentlessly focused on the high cost of living in New York City and the economy.
Maybe part of the reason he won't endorse him is because he's jealous that he's so charismatic, because Hakei Jeff's affect, I would say, is like walking corpse.
Hakei Jeff, whatever you think of him, I think we can all agree he's exactly not very charismatic.
Yeah.
Not very charismatic.
He outworked, he out-communicated, and he out-organized the opposition, and that's clearly why he was successful.
So what's holding you back from endorsing him right now?
Well, we don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a substantive conversation with him. And so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're not besties. Like, they need to hang out. They need to go. I don't know what's like a bro-ish thing that they can do. I don't know, watch a baseball game or something. That is the most pathetic response. And I got to point out, guys, that he claimed he told a journalist when he was asked about why he hadn't endorsed Mamdani, he said, quote, "It has traditionally been the case that Democratic leadership doesn't get involved in active Democratic primaries and allows the people to make the decision with respect to the best path forward. But the problem is that Jeffries actually endorsed Maya Wiley in 2021 when he was the House Democratic Caucus chair. She was running for mayor."
You know, I actually ran into Hakei Jeffries while he was out campaigning for Maya Wiley. And
oh, interesting.
I will say Maya Wiley, very charismatic. Very charismatic. Some of that, I wish some of that charisma rubbed off on Hakei Jeffries. But no, listen, he's in an awkward position because, you know, he is one of these Democratic leaders who talks a progressive game, but doesn't really support that many progressive things domestically. And then on foreign policy, forget it. He's just like purebred neocon, support for Israel. That's not Zohran Mamdani. So it's putting people like Hakei Jeffries in a very awkward position. So what is he going to do? Well, he's going to resort to the fake scandal, the fake controversy of making a crisis out of something that A, is not even offensive, and B, Zohran Mamdani never even said. So he was asked about that by ABC.
You mentioned the diversity of your district, including a lot of Jewish constituents. Mamdani has made comments that some have said veer towards anti-Semitism.
Oh, some have said it. Okay. Well, you know, great. Well, some have said something, so let's cite that as credible.
Yeah.
Let's launder it to you as like a serious thing. Like that's
a Trumpian framing also.
Someone can say anything. Like the point of journalism is to, like, if you're going to lodge a charge, there has to be some substance behind it. So the fact that some people say something doesn't mean anything, because someone can say anything about anybody.
Right.
That's called words. It's called language. Is there any substance? No, but that doesn't matter to journalism. At least corporate journalism.
His initial statement after October 7th, he criticized the Israeli government, but didn't criticize Hamas. He defended the use of the word globalize, or the phrase globalize intifada. And
I don't know if he hasn't even defended it. He says that he won't condemn it, and he points out that it's used as a shaking off. Again, it's so important to remember that even the premises that are presented as objective and fact-based are like full of editorial.
I'm personally all for defending the phrase globalized intifada, because to me it means something noble, globalize a resistance to a criminal occupation. Like, what's not to like about that? But to be fair to Zohran Mamdani, he didn't even do that. He just just declined to condemn it, which is something that, like, it's like the fact that that's being used as a controversy just speaks to how cynical all these people are, because anybody can play this game. Do you condemn this? And if not, then why not? Like, why not just like sit all day and go through every single possible phrase and see if you condemn it or not? It's just a complete fake controversy.
Yes. And, a couple of things I also want to point out, which is that, obviously we shouldn't be surprised that Hakeem Jeffries won't endorse Zohran, because Jeffries is like a top recipient of AIPAC. He doesn't want to upset his AIPAC donors. And this was in California, but it's relevant. He had a secret meeting with 150 Silicon Valley donors earlier this year to try and rekindle their relationship. So again, this is not a surprising thing. And I just want to point out another thing, because, Carl just said out loud that Zohran didn't say anything about Hamas. He only criticized Israel. Now, there are many reasons that you do that. One is that the U.S. government doesn't fund Hamas, at least overtly now. The U.S. government doesn't fund Hamas. The U.S. government doesn't portray Hamas as a democratic party the way that they do with Israel. They don't claim that it's the only democracy in the Middle East, etc. And Hamas, of course, it has not...
Okay, I think Katie just froze, assuming it's not me. So, before Katie comes back, let's go back to the clip and she can finish her thought when she returns.
That the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu should be arrested, or he would if he were mayor. He would arrest Netanyahu if he visited New York City. Do these things concern you?
Globalizing the Intifada, by way of example, is not an acceptable phrase, and he's going to have to clarify his position on that as he moves forward. With respect to the Jewish communities,
he declined to condemn something he never even said, and he declines to be a police officer for free speech. That was his answer.
That I represent, I think our nominee is going to have to convince folks that he is prepared to aggressively address the rise in anti-Semitism in the city of New York, which has been an unacceptable development. And any mayor, whether you're a Democratic mayor, a Republican mayor, an independent mayor, has got to commit to the safety and well-being of all of the people of the city of New York. And
which Zohran Mamdani has. And I think what his victory shows is that people are done being intimidated by this smear of anti-Semitism, that if you oppose Israel and its mass murder, then you're enabling anti-Semitism and this mythical rise of anti-Semitism. It's just a fake scam to intimidate people into silence, and so that they don't oppose the ongoing mass murder of Palestinians in Gaza. That's what it comes down to. And I think enough people, I think Mamdani's election, and it wasn't just about the issue of Gaza, obviously, because he campaigned also, and he had a lot of success campaigning on the issue of affordability and the high cost of living, which people like Hakeem Jeffries have done nothing to address. People also are saying that they're tired of seeing images of shredded Palestinian children in their feeds. And this was a rebellion against that by helping to endorse Mamdani. It wasn't just about that. And I think what basically they're telling Hakeem Jeffries is they're not going to be intimidated anymore by him using the anti-Semitism card. It's done. People are tired of it. It's been almost 2 years now of mass murder, of daily images which everybody can see of Palestinian civilians being bombed with U.S. weapons, with the full support of Hakeem Jeffries and Donald Trump and everybody else in Congress, except for those at the margins. So I just think Hakeem Jeffries, if they continue to go this route, on top of being immoral politically, I don't think it's a winner for them.
Hi, sorry about that, everyone.
So you froze, Katie, as you were making the point about Zohran Mamdani's statement about Hamas after October.
That he did.
After October 7th.
Which I can't access right now because my Wi-Fi is messed up. But I don't know if someone else can. Or basically, the short story is that he did condemn Hamas. So Jonathan Karl, shame on you, Jonathan Karl.
You lied, Jonathan Karl.
Yeah, you lied. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, Jonathan Karl. Okay, so that's just the sleaziest question. He's like, some people say this, right? So that's sleaze attempt number one, and then he lies about Zohran Mamdani's actual statement. So, yeah. And I think what I recall him saying is that also he talked about apartheid and occupation. And how can you not talk about that in the context of October 7th, unless you believe history begins on October 7th? If you don't believe that history began on October 7th, aka if you believe in the concept of linear time, then you have to talk about occupation and apartheid. That's obvious, because that's what creates all the conflict in Israel, Palestine, and even beyond.
Yeah, really shameful.
Okay, we can move on to Raphael Grossi. He is the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and he attracted some controversy because before Israel and the U.S. took part in a joint bombing campaign against Iran, unprovoked aggression, the IAEA under Grossi put out some reports that sort of helped bolster the Israeli-U.S. narrative that Iran was being shady with their nuclear program, even though the U.S. intelligence assessment remains that Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. So here is Grossi now in the aftermath of the Israeli-U.S. strikes on Iran.
We are looking for clarity, and there's confusion in the United States. CBS is reporting that the Defense Intelligence Agency assesses Iran's program was set back a few months, but once they dig out, they could resume in a number of months. They have to rebuild electrical and water supplies. The CIA and the National Intelligence Directors say the facilities were destroyed, and it would take years to rebuild. Israel says the military program is set back many years. What's the truth here? What do you make of these assessments?
All of that depends on your metrics, Margaret. If you tell me it will take them 2 months or 3 months, for what?
Right.
The capacities they have are there. They can have, in a matter of months, I would say, a few cascades of centrifuges spinning and producing enriched uranium, or less than that. But as I said,
we do style content sometimes here on Useful Idiots. Like, so look at that tie. That's is that me or is that a big tie? It's like
big tie.
It's coming out of his jacket.
Yeah, we call him Big BTG, Big Tie Grossi.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really wear a tie unless I have to, unless I'm forced to at gunpoint. So I'm not really up on
tie etiquette. Yeah.
Tie sizes these days.
Tie size.
But that strikes me as an unusually large tie. I don't know. Chat, weigh in.
Weigh in. Let us know.
Is this the new style? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go like super thin, paper like super thin, but that strikes me as unusually large.
No tie for Guy. Too much. What did you do today? No Jew for you. We also got too much tie for Guy.
Too much tie for Guy.
Frankly speaking, one cannot claim that everything has disappeared and there is nothing there. It is clear that there has been severe damage, but it's not total damage, first of all. And secondly, Iran has the capacities there, industrial and technological capacities. So if they so wish, they will be able to start doing this again.
I mean, it's kind of silly that this is the debate right now. Like, how much damage did we do to Iran's non-existent nuclear weapons program? Because, again, they don't have a nuclear weapons program. They had an enrichment program, which they're entitled to have, but no one cares about that because, international law, treaties don't matter. It's just all about might makes right. But that's the debate right now. How much did the U.S.-Israeli bombing set back Iran's nuclear program? It's like, no matter what the truth is, I kind of like, Trump's narrative is like, we've destroyed it forever. And it's like, if that's what it takes to get him to stop the aggression, then
good idea.
I want him to have it. I want him to have it.
Totally destroyed, Mr. President. There's literally nothing left.
Yeah.
You look so badass. I feel so much safer, and there's not a shred of nuclear weapon left. Yeah. Thanks, Donald.
All right. Well, let's go to Democratic Senator Mark Warner, who, he supported the bombing because why not, right? Like, sure, you're the political opposition to the president who just launched a unprovoked attack on a sovereign country. But yeah, like, what's there to condemn there? But here is Mark Warner with his concern going forward.
I'm not saying you're saying this for the rest of your life and, whatever. But as of today, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But as of today, isn't the world safe?
I am glad that these capabilities have been cut back. Do we know what Iran?
I am glad we bombed Iran. That's Mark Warner. Okay, gotcha. Right. Check. Okay.
Also,
next step is going to be? Do we?
He's saying, I'm glad that stuff happened. I don't know what's coming next, which is funny because there's a Spanish language song called Yo no sé mañana. I don't know tomorrow. I don't know tomorrow. I don't know tomorrow. Yo no sé mañana. What'll happen to you? What'll happen to me? I don't know if I'm for you, if you are for me, if we wind up together or hating each other or loving each other. So real I feel like there's a whole song that he could just sing instead of bothering with these responses. So we should definitely do a mashup. Wilson, write this down as a song reference. Okay.
Are we going to be saying the same thing if Iran now tries to race to a bomb in the trunk of a car because we don't have any inspectors on the ground? Are we?
If Iran tries to race to a bomb in the trunk of a car, I'm not sure what he means by that. Like does he mean in the back of a car, Iran's going to build a nuclear bomb, or does he mean they're going to put a nuclear bomb in a car? And if so, that doesn't sound like a very efficient way to launch a nuclear attack is in a car. So I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe he means simply, and this is the most generous interpretation. He means that no matter how much you bomb Iran, they already have the enriched uranium, so they can just take the enriched uranium and drive it somewhere else in a car, which is true. They could technically do that. It's easy actually to move enriched uranium. The professor Ted Postal talks about this. Maybe he means that, but that's something Jake Tapper could have tried to clarify. Does he mean they're going to have a new facility inside a car? Because that seems a little challenging.
Yeah.
Well, we can do more Mark Warner. Actually, you know what? Let's actually skip ahead because there's so many Democrats to hear from and so many diverse ways of saying, yes, we're Democrats. We oppose Trump, but we support what he did. And Senator Chris Murphy's kind of critical, but even then, not really. So let's hear from him.
Violating the laws and the Constitution.
Let's turn to the very latest on Iran now. You are, of course, on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. You were briefed on the strike against Iran on Thursday. Based on the intelligence that you have received, Senator, would you have ordered that strike if you were Commander-in-Chief?
Well, what President Trump told the country is that that Iran's nuclear capability was obliterated, and it just was not obliterated. In fact,
that wasn't the question. I mean, if you're going to get to the answer, okay. But the answer was, would you have ordered that strike? And what I'm picking up here, and maybe he'll come out against it. I doubt it. But the question is, would you have ordered that strike? And Democrats have a hard time saying, no, I would not have committed aggression, because in their minds, to me, that makes them to them, that makes them look weak. If they won't bomb a country, that makes them look weak somehow. And really, I think people want to hear someone with some conviction and some courage say, actually, no, we shouldn't have bombed a foreign country because we don't actually want to do that. But let's see if he can say that.
The International Atomic Energy Commission just confirmed that we only set back their program by a handful of months. We were at the negotiating table trying to come to a diplomatic agreement. No, I would not have authorized strikes literally at the moment that we were sitting down with the Iranians trying to come to a peaceful settlement.
Okay, my bad. Actually, there we go. I'm pleasantly surprised. He actually said I would not have authorized those strikes. So good for him.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. I'm happy to be surprised.
Happy to be wrong.
Well, I don't know. I always have to watch out for how much he qualifies this stuff. So let's see further.
The only way that you are going to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is an agreement, because as open reporting has suggested, these strikes did not destroy all of their enriched uranium. It did not destroy all of their centrifuges, and it certainly didn't destroy their knowledge. And so it stands to reason that they can reconstitute their nuclear program within months. And what are we going to do? We're going to carry out these massive $100 million strikes every 3 or 4 months? No, you need a diplomatic agreement, and these strikes ultimately set back those diplomatic conversations.
Well, let me follow up with you, because you've said the strikes were illegal because they were carried out without congressional approval. Your colleague, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, actually took it a step further. She said it's grounds for impeachment. Senator, do you agree with that? Is the fact that President Trump acted unilaterally grounds for impeachment?
Well, that's a decision the House makes. That's, not a decision the Senate makes. But it is clear that this is illegal. I know he.
Did we lose the clip?
Yeah, Wilson, I'm not sure what happened.
Well, anyway, look, I stand corrected. He actually did say he wouldn't have authorized those strikes. And so I apologize to Senator Chris Murphy. I'm pleasantly surprised, sir, and I tip my hat. He was saying here, though, that he's not willing to come out and say it's an impeachable offense because he's saying that's the House's jurisdiction.
Well, I think also what makes it awkward is that so many presidents have done this, right? Have acted without congressional approval. So that kind of stood out for me. It's kind of a reminder of like, this is always the thing with Trump, is that people underplay his uniqueness. People overplay his uniqueness, and then other people overplay how much he's part of a continuation. He always does escalate, but he comes from a rich tradition of warmongering presidents.
What I find so funny about Democrats is, in Trump's first term, they went all in on impeaching Trump when he froze some weapons to Ukraine, and they called this a grave threat to our national security. Adam Schiff, that's when he famously said, we arm Ukraine so that we fight Russia over there. We don't have to fight them here. And that was a big thing. Now Trump bombs a country illegally. All right. I think that's pretty clear. Does so while using diplomacy as a smokescreen, as a ruse to like cover up for the Israeli-U.S. bombing. And, yes, AOC is coming out for impeachment. Al Green has, but Al Green always wants to impeach Trump. So that's nothing new. But otherwise not getting much support. And that, to me, is Democrats in a nutshell. They'll impeach someone for freezing weapons, but not for using them illegally on a foreign country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember when who was it, like Van Jones, who said Trump was presidential when he ordered some what was it? He did something with Syria.
Van Jones loves to praise Trump when he does something hawkish. Yeah. And what did Van Jones recently say? He said that Iran is not your normal country, so therefore it was good to bomb it. Right. Remember, he was like, Iran's weird. Iran is a threat. It should be bombed. It's not your normal country. And Van Jones is not your normal sellout. He's a former like Maoist, like radical, who's become a complete mouthpiece for the establishment. Okay, well, all right. We're here for Chris Murphy. Let's go to Lindsey Graham. He's always refreshing when it comes on matters of war and peace. So what does he have to say about Iran?
Negotiations.
I do not believe it's fair 80 years after the Holocaust to put the Jewish state in a room full of religious Nazi Ayatollah types. No matter what you give them, they still want to kill you. So to start these negotiations, let's start with the proposition that the Ayatollah is rejecting his past policy of killing all the Jews and destroying Israel. If the Ayatollah can't say to the world, we no longer wish to destroy Israel, even...
Okay, not only is the Ayatollah not committed, never said he will kill all the Jews, in Iran, you have to have a Jewish member of parliament.
Yeah, there's a very active Jewish community inside Iran. Max Blumenthal was just there, and he went and went to services with them. So if the Ayatollah wants to kill all the Jews, he's not doing a very good job of it, given there's a thriving Jewish community in his own country. It's just so stupid. I mean,
so dumb. Yeah.
And then he starts with saying, because of the Nazi Holocaust 80 years ago, that therefore there should be no diplomacy with Iran. I mean, like, and again, no pushback at all from the host. It's just so silly. Well, meanwhile, who's actually a threat to people? Who's killing a lot of people now in mass numbers on a Nazi-like level? It's the Jewish state committing mass murder in Gaza. And no one says you can't make a deal with Israel, even though they're carrying out mass murder. So it's like different levels of lunacy. And by the way, what has Iran actually said about Israel? Yes, they said that the Zionist regime should come to an end. What does Lindsey Graham say about Iran? He says their regime should come to an end. So both countries advocate regime change. In the case of Iran, they don't want a regime that prioritizes and privileges the rights of one people over everybody else, which is what Israel is. It's a Jewish supremacist state. Iran has said they don't want to see a Jewish supremacist state.
Yeah, and
they've also said they've at times endorsed what everyone else claims to support, which is a two-state solution.
Right.
Iran has at times endorsed the idea of the Jewish supremacist state being preserved and Israel getting to keep 78% of the land it stole from Palestinians, and Palestinians getting just 22% of the land that was stolen from them in the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem. Iran has accepted that proposal at times. Back in 2017, they accepted it. They endorsed a resolution calling for that. Israel and the U.S. have never endorsed a Palestinian state, even on those really unfair terms for Palestinians, because they insist on a Jewish supremacist state that can steal as much Palestinian land and kill as many it kills as many Palestinians as they want to.
Yeah, and also it's kind of different when you're talking about a regime that has bombed you. Like, we want to overthrow Iran, the Iranian government. Iran hasn't bombed us.
That's
like,
right.
I think Iran has a bit more justification for saying stuff about Israel than we do in the United States about Iran. And also, I think Lindsey Graham is actually confusing Iran with Germany. Like, does he know who actually perpetrated the Holocaust against Jews that he claims to care so much about? Like, should Israel not be have any treaties with Germany?
That's a great point, which again, just you think the host would point that out, but yeah, sure. Let's just use a nonsensical historical reference to discourage diplomacy with Iran and actually advocate regime change in Iran. It's just so silly, and that's the point here. Palestinians in the entire region, they're being made to pay for the crimes of Europeans that they have nothing to do with. And somehow it's not the Europeans, like the Germans, that have to still pay for those crimes. It's now the Palestinians and Iranians as well, and anybody else who supports Palestinian rights.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And also he talks about the Ayatollah types, suggesting that they're theocratic. Does he have anything to say about Smotrich or Ben Gvir? Who are total zealots, first of all, and they also believe in Lebensraum, like openly say that.
Okay, we're short on time, so let's skip ahead. Let's go to Congressmember Michael McCall. He is the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and it would not be a foreign conflict involving the U.S. if there weren't some demonizing and fear-mongering about some sort of domestic threat. In this case, from Iranians and others in the U.S. who now are all of a sudden a new threat and are involved in what are called sleeper cells, some sort of new threat that has to be whipped up in order to justify foreign aggression against Iran and its allies. So here's Michael McCall on that.
On the homeland front, do you then dismiss these concerns about threats? You have the National Terrorism Advisory System that says there's a heightened threat environment in the U.S. after these strikes. There were federal agents that arrested 11 foreign nationals from Iran, including one who had ties to Hezbollah. Have you seen specific evidence of any kind of threat here in the United States, or is it, as you say, just done and over with?
No, I have. We picked up 11 Iranians, one a sniper, one IRGC, another one a known suspected terrorist, just within the last couple of days.
But were they planning to do anything, or did they just happen to have those alliances from the past?
I don't know all the details, but I will tell you the FBI briefed me in a defensive briefing after Soleimani was killed. I was a part of that.
Back in 2020.
That I was under indictment in Iran and that I was on that top target list. So, look, is it imminent? I don't know. We have to take it seriously that there could be sleeper cells in the United States that could go after people like Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, myself and others that were involved in that decision making, and including the president of the United States. We know he's been targeted.
We know.
This is my favorite talking point, where they say that Trump was the target of an Iranian assassination plot. You think that Trump, if he was really targeted by Iran, that he would then authorize negotiations with them and still call for talking to them? No, he'd be like ordering, I don't know, even more military strikes than he already has. And there's been no evidence for it whatsoever. And it's so obvious that this is just a plot. The actual plot here, the actual sleeper cells are the media mouthpieces who are just like pushing propaganda about assassination plots to make diplomacy impossible and encourage war. It's the classic playbook.
It really
Like,
is.
remember
It's
George
so
W.
pathetic.
Bush? Like
Yep.
George W. Bush and Saddam Hussein, they tried to kill my dad. Therefore, we have to go bomb their whole country, create chaos, kill a bunch of people, create refugees, destroy Iraq. Same thing. Okay. Let's cover a domestic issue. Because as we're broadcasting today, the Senate is considering this so-called new big beautiful bill, which, among other things, is going to throw a bunch of people off of Medicaid, despite Republican promises that they wouldn't do that. So who else but to advocate for depriving people of health care but Oklahoma Senator Republican Markwayne Mullin, the guy with two first names in his first name.
One of the biggest sticking points, the issue of Medicaid. Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, as we mentioned, says he's voting against the bill because he believes it includes funding cuts that will force his state to decide whose coverage to eliminate and what critical services to cut. Senator, as you know, President Trump promised no Medicaid cuts. Is the big beautiful bill a broken promise?
Absolutely not. What we're doing is cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse, and I want to use that word abuse, out of the Medicaid system and make sure it's for the people that it was originally intended for. Keep in mind, right now, there's 35 million people that live under the poverty line inside the United States. Yet there's 70 million that's on Medicaid. Yeah. Now, it's unsustainable. Medicaid was designed for those in the most dire need, and that's what we need to make sure it's there for. Now, what people are upset about, especially in states, is ever since Obamacare, there's been this loophole that allows the states to actually charge providers an exorbitant amount to pay their share. And so instead of the states paying their share, they're charging the providers, which one requires the United States taxpayers and other states to offset these high provider taxes inside different states.
I mean, look, there's truth to that, right? But it's like, because Obamacare, the premise of it was like, okay, we can't dare take away the right to profit off of killing people, right? We have to preserve for-profit health insurance. Like, that's the bottom line. So they had to come up with these complicated ways to like subsidize health insurance providers to give a little bit more people health care. And that's what they came up with. And yeah, so for some people, the costs increase. And that's because they won't consider just getting rid of for-profit health insurance and getting rid of this notion you can profit off of denying people medical coverage. And so therefore they had to come up with these schemes. But so it meant that, see, for some people, costs raised. It also meant for some providers, they lost maybe a little bit of profit, while still the federal government would also stepped in to offer states some subsidies to help them with the cost. But the problem is Republican states, a lot of them, rejected the federal subsidies. They're like, no, we don't want your money because we don't believe in the idea of government giving people health care. Health care is strictly for companies to profit off of, not for the government to provide. So like everybody's at fault here, especially those whose fundamental concern is protecting the bottom line of healthcare profiteers.
And also, just got to point out, this guy is so full of it and either has no idea what he's talking about or is lying or both. But according to Medicaid's eligibility policy, people can be admitted to Medicaid through states up to 133% of the federal poverty line. So this isn't like rocket science. So what it says is that states were given the option to extend eligibility to adults with income at or below 133% of the federal poverty line. Most states have chosen to expand coverage to adults, and those that have not yet expanded may choose to do so at any time. See if your state has expanded Medicaid coverage to low-income adults. That's from Medicaid's eligibility policy. So, Markwayne, surprise, surprise, you're full of it.
Yeah. And if his point is like, hey, listen, like we have 35 million on Medicaid, but 35 million are living below the poverty line, but 70 million are on Medicaid. So 35 million must be basically fraudsters. First of all, have you considered that maybe the poverty line doesn't actually reflect the number of people who are actually living in poverty? That the numbers aren't, instead of like unemployment rates don't always reflect how many people are unemployed or underemployed or don't make enough money to survive. I mean, that's the point here. It's like, even if you're not technically below the poverty line, it doesn't mean you're not living in poverty, or at least really, really, really struggling and need healthcare coverage as a result, which he now wants to take away for a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I've said this before, but only 4 million able-bodied adults without dependables work less than 20 hours a week.
Okay, we have time for one more clip. So let's go to Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor under Joe Biden. They're the ones who fueled a mass murder campaign by Israel in Gaza and did nothing to stop it, and somehow still defend their policy. And what's happening today, as we went to air, the latest news I saw was that there was a new massacre by Israel targeting a cafe used by journalists.
Yes.
Of course, that's who Israel's going after, as they've done from the start of their genocide, is going after the people documenting the genocide. And today is no exception.
And I want to go on record as predicting that Israel defenders and Zionists and Jewish supremacists are all going to be like, I thought there was no food. How is there a cafe? You know they're going to say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a place where people worked out of because it had internet. It's one of the rare places where it hasn't been cut off from the internet. So people would upload their footage from this cafe, which Israel has now bombed. So anyway, Jake Sullivan was interviewed by Fareed Zakaria of CNN at the Aspen Festival, which is a gathering every year of foreign policy elites. So here's Jake Sullivan.
If they went for it. Let me ask you about Gaza, but starting with something that you must get asked a lot and controversy swirls. The Biden administration is accused by many people of not having done enough to end a really horrific war in Gaza, in which
that's a polite way of being complicit in mass murder.
Yeah.
Like that's like going to someone like arming a mass shooter and saying you didn't do enough to stop the mass shooting at that school. You didn't do enough. No, like they're complicit. The criticism is not they didn't do enough. It's that they're complicit 100% in the mass killing. Fareed.
Thousands and thousands of innocent Palestinians seem to have died. What is your answer?
I'm sorry, they seem to have died? Like, does he have to qualify every single statement?
It's Pallywood, Aaron. It's Pallywood.
Yeah. Thousands of, I've seen, no, it's actually, there was a recent study saying that the toll is closer to 100,000.
Yeah.
Rather than the official toll over on 50,000. And in fact, even this revised toll, I would probably bet is even too low, 100,000. I mean, that's what happens when you commit more than a year and a half long genocide. Is a lot of people die, a lot more than can be counted.
So to that criticism.
Well, first, what is happening in Gaza today and what has happened since October 7th has been a god-awful tragedy. It was a tragedy on October 7th.
No, it's been a policy decision. Like he's describing it like it's a humanitarian crisis.
Yeah.
It's genocide, Jake.
When we the world witness the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And it's been a tragedy every day since. A tragedy of innocent people
Notice that he frames it as what it's done to Jews since the Holocaust. It's a very irresponsible comparison for so many reasons. I mean, this was not done to kill Jews because they were Jews. Israel killed a lot of them, which would be interesting for him to actually acknowledge. But note, he doesn't say this is the largest genocide of Palestinians since the Nakba.
Exactly right.
There's never any framing of this in terms of historical importance.
Yeah, because almost 80 years later, people like Jake Tapper aren't allowed to acknowledge the Nakba. You can't acknowledge that Israel's foundation is based on ethnic cleansing.
Right.
Still can't acknowledge that. And of course, you can't even imagine that there have been so many more massacres of Palestinians ever since. That's just taken as like a natural thing, that so natural it can't even be acknowledged because it doesn't matter. And yeah, this again, the relevance of the Holocaust to the current state of affairs in Israel-Palestine is that Israel is inflicting a Holocaust. These are Holocaust-like conditions that Palestinians are living under. If you read the accounts of people who survived the Nazi Holocaust and you compare that to the experience of Palestinians now, who are starving to death, who people, the largest cohort of child amputees, on and on and on. These are Holocaust-like conditions, which people like Jake Tapper helped inflict.
Yeah, and by the way, this is interesting. So there's a Haaretz article that came out recently, and it quotes someone, it quotes an IDF soldier as saying, "I felt like a Nazi. It looked exactly like we were actually the Nazis and they were the Jews." And you know what's good news, Aaron? There will be disciplinary actions, obviously, about the treatment of Palestinians, right? Nope. No.
Yeah.
The Israeli soldier who said he felt like a Nazi while stationed in Gaza could be expelled from Harvard, not because he did that, but because he described described it that way.
Yeah. And this Haaretz article, what was it? It was, confirming from the inside of Israel what is obvious to anybody else with their eyes open, what Palestinians have been documenting, which is that Israel and the U.S. teamed up to create a fake humanitarian organization, so Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, to replace the UN, which was keeping Palestinians alive and keeping, the notion that Palestinians are refugees from homes they were kicked out of by Israel alive, which Israel wants to wipe out. So they created this fake aid group and then used the distribution of aid to starving people to kill them. And that's what Israeli soldiers in this Haaretz article confirmed, is that they were given the orders to shoot at people even when there was no threat to Israel, because of course the whole point of everything Israel does in Gaza is to destroy Gaza and kill Palestinians to make life impossible there and force as many people to leave as possible. All right, back to Jake Sullivan, and then we'll close out the show.
Being killed, a tragedy of people being denied basic food and medicine, a tragedy of hostages being held and their families not knowing whether they're going to ever see them again. And that's, if you work on these issues as a human being, as someone who has a beating heart, like, you have to feel the weight of that. And I felt,
if you're implementing the policies that are causing the quote unquote tragedy that you're claiming to oppose, you have to feel that. You have to come up with creative ways to sound empathetic while being a sociopathic monster. And that's what he is. I mean, the fact that he's still allowed to speak in public without being berated is really, it speaks to what a impressive propaganda system we have. And he's allowed to get away with these lines where he sounds compassionate while he was the one who's implementing the policies that caused all this suffering and death. It's really something. It's really something to behold.
I've never seen him so animated in his entire life.
All right. You know what? We can't even hear this guy anymore. It's the same old thing. It's just trying to deflect responsibility for mass murder that he was complicit in. So anyway, that's just a window into how the Biden people are still handling their complicity. All right. Well, kind of a downer way to end the show, but that's sometimes how it goes. I mean,
well, I think I had a good, I think I had a great ending. I said, it's more animated than we've ever seen him. So
he's worked.
It's good for Jake.
He's improved his acting skills. I think we can end on that positive. So Jake Sullivan improved acting skills.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing with his fancy Harvard fellowship or wherever he is like
Harvard,
practicing his fake empathy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap the show here. Katie,
one more thing. Sorry, one more thing. I want to give him credit for doing, Aaron, because we want to end on a positive note. Another one. Remember, he did declare September 9th, 2023, the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Yes, he's really a strategic genius. You can see why he's being hired at Harvard to teach young people the art of foreign policy, when he was behind such lines as the Middle East has never been quieter. And then 8 days later, October 7th happens. Yeah. He's also the guy who infamously said, "Hey, Hillary, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria."
Right.
And look how that turned out. Al-Qaeda won. So congratulations, Jake Sullivan, on that too.
Yeah, congrats. Yeah.
The Katie Halper Show on Tuesday.
Well, we're going to be having actually Daniel Davis. Remember, we had him, the lieutenant colonel that we had on Useful Idiots. He's great. He's really fascinating because he's basically a born again Christian, and he's but what makes him weird in that is that he sees Palestinians as human beings, and unfortunately, that is a rarity among the right wing evangelicals, I would say.
So he's a rare Christian who actually follows the teachings of Jesus Christ, as opposed to those who claim to support Jesus Christ, but while supporting policies that stand against everything Jesus stood for.
Yes, and he'll be on either tonight or next week. I'm not sure, but he'll definitely be on sometime soon. Sorry, not tonight. Sorry, he'll be on either Tuesday night or one of the next 2 Tuesdays. But you got to come by to youtube.com/the Katie Halper Show. Always a great time.
Okay, our website is usefulaidiospodcast.com. Please go there to support the show and get bonus content. It's what keeps us going. It's what helps us deliver many more Monday mornings to come. Thanks for watching this edition. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.